Hello, and thank you for joining us today for this second edition of our GWO Expert Series webinars, where we bring you together with our membership for a look at what the future could hold as digital solutions become a more common part of the GWO training mix. So up on the screen, we should now have our first audience panel question, and we want to know what you think, you guys in the audience. So please take a moment to log on to menti.com and type in the code that you see on the screen. Eladia, I have a problem here with this. Of course I do. Well, type the code you see on the screen. We will also take questions for the panel later on today. There we go. Yeah. So if you take add questions and you pop up questions, put it in the questions box and we'll take them later on. If we do not get around to take your questions, we will make sure to answer you in due time after this webinar. So I see some of the questions, some of the answers are coming in. So my name is Jakob Lau-Holst. I'm the CEO of Global Wind Organization. Some of you probably expected Ralph Savage, our head of communications, as your host. He would have done a much better job than me. He is the mastermind behind this series of webinars, but he and his whole family has come down with what appears to be something as normal or as rare as a normal seasonal bug. His PCR test is showing he's negative for COVID, so that's great. But shout out to you, Ralph, and best wishes for speedy recovery. In his absence, I shall do my best to try to host. I've asked Søren Sejer-Gøtje, who's sitting next to me, to assist me. Søren is the operations manager and has been with the team since 2015. During this time, he has played an instrumental role in developing the governance systems upon which our framework is built, including the Window platform, which you all know that passed 500,000 records earlier this year. And also in the room, which you cannot see, is Eladia Gavella. Eladia takes care of all of the production so that we can try to focus on content, and thank you for that. So looking at the results from Menti, what are your first thoughts, Søren?
Well, looking at the results, I need to have them on my screen here, but it looks like that there's a clear preference among the respondents that the most important skill for an auditor is that he actually or she helps the client understand the GWO requirements. So it needs to be a ping pong of sorts, a cooperation towards a successful audit between the auditor and the auditee.
Yeah, so no surprises here, I think. Also, of course, second comes up knows what a good training looks like, and then this is why we created the AQT. Let's get back to the first slide. Get back to the slides. So thanks again, everyone, for playing this game. We have more games later coming up. Now I'd like to introduce the topic and the panel for today. Our first panelist and guest is Lisa Mellon. Lisa has 20 years experience in EHS from various advocacy roles in the UK. She has a master's in safety and environmental management from the University of Paisley and joined GE in 2009, where she currently leads the EHS in the wind and projects and services business. Lisa is our chair of the Audit Compliance Committee, and she forms part of our executive committee. From Ørsted, we have Jesper Bakke Hansen. Jesper is a specialist in incident management and compliance in the wind industry, first at Siemens Wind Power and since 2018 at Ørsted. And shout out to you, Ørsted, for getting announced a new CEO today. Prior to working in wind, he was at the Danish Safety Technology Authority as a specialist that focused on compliance and auditing against EU standards and directives. And Jesper is vice chair of our Audit Compliance Committee and also part of the Executive Committee. So welcome to you, Jesper. The first of our panelists from the auditing community is Giedrius Jodis. I hope I say this correctly, Giedrius. Giedrius is an experienced lead auditor and engineer. Today he specializes in GWO training. He has certified several of our training providers on behalf of Lloyd's Register and is one of the market's early adopters of remote auditing services according to the new requirements for digital learning. And from DNVGL, Søren Hald has been a lead auditor since the mid-90s. He's well known in our community. We believe he certified the very first, or at least one of the very first training centers in 2012. We know he certified the first blended learning solution, and he was involved in the first remote audit. So Søren is a real first mover. Along with Giedrius, the two will give us a first-hand perspective on how this new approach to auditing remotely using digital solution technologies is working out. So welcome to all of you.
Yep.
Today's agenda begins with a reminder about the year so far and how we fast-tracked a number of digitalization projects. And then we'll recap the key lessons from last week's webinar on quality of learning. And after that, we'll turn to our guest auditors who will provide a case study on one particular aspect, the delivery of remote audits. This should bring us to about 20-minute mark, and then we'll begin the panel discussion and take your questions on the big governance issues in a digitalized world. So we begin with the year so far. Even before COVID-19, our 2022 strategy called Safety Without Borders contained an ambition to facilitate much greater use of digital tools in training and in auditing. We released a strategy on March 11 in the morning, and in the afternoon, a global pandemic was declared by the World Health Organization and the world went into lockdown. So need I say, the world has changed. The need for digital solutions was seriously fast-tracked by COVID-19. And on the screen are the 4 things the GWO team, my team, brought to the market in April, several months and for some things even years in advance of our agreed schedule. So we've begun evaluating this work now, and what we learned today with you and in this series of webinars will feed into our strategy session with the members on 29th of September and inform the work that we do going forward. So first of all, we fast-tracked our work on the requirements for training providers and for certification bodies. That's to the left on your screen. We have been describing what we see in GWO as relevant use of GWO tools. So for training providers, this now allows them to be certified to deliver various blended solutions for all training standards. And as a tangible result, before April, we had only one training provider delivering a blended package. In September, now less than 5 months later, 36 training providers have responded, roughly 10% of the community, and are now certified to deliver one or several GWO standards using these digital tools and blended learning solutions. So allow me to recap the lessons from episode 1 from last week, where we learned about the delivery from these 36 training providers. So that we can start our discussions based on this. It should be no surprise, we have learned that applying digital delivery and blended learning solution is viable, and also for GWO standard safety training. Many of us previously thought that the main drivers for digitalization would be cost and efficiency. And actually it now appears that improved flexibility, personalization of training, consistency and scalability will be defining qualities that training providers and their customers will strive to achieve from blended learning. So rather than cost and cost as the main driver, actually more about quality and raising the quality. It will be interesting to learn today how digital solutions will change the auditing process. What are the limitations and defining qualities for these tools used in audits? So with that, let's move to the second chapter of today's webinar, the case study from DNVGL and Lloyd's Register. Søren Hell from DNVGL, Giedrius Jodis from LRQA, welcome to you both. Before we show the case study and start on your reflections, could you give an audience a flavor of your work so far? Søren, you've completed a couple of remote audits since April. Just tell us briefly what they were for.
You mean how it went, or?
Yeah, what were they for? What kind of training were we doing?
It was the BST training. We also have the first one with the MWOW, you know, the digital training. So we have quite some experience with the GWO training, doing that remotely, and we have that in general as well, because you know, after the lockdown, more or less all our business turned into a digital business instead of showing up on site.
Yeah, thank you. And Gidrius, you perform a similar number of audits for remote training and remote audits. What were those audits for?
So I fully agree with Soren that during the pandemic, most of audits, because we are auditing not only the GWO trainings, we are auditing also ISO systems and so on. So all the audits moved to remote, let's say, approach. Yes, and my experience of GWO, I was auditing three training providers. So two of them was they were certifying against BSTRP. One audit was also combined recertification of BST. Another training provider was only under the audit against digital requirements of delivery of theory parts, only theory parts covering some modules. So three training providers, it was my experience. It ran quite well, so we will discuss later.
So the case study here is based on really experience from various types of audits and application of remote audits.
Yes.
We have with you prepared. This is like a TV kitchen. We prepared a dish in advance with you guys. So here we have some bullets about the lessons you've reported to us that you've learned. So we can start on the left side of the slide. The opportunities. You've suggested practice. This is cost neutral at the moment. Can you explain the points here?
Well, you could say of course, the travel cost is reduced quite significantly if we're not going to visit the customer on site. On the other hand, we need more time to preparation of the audit. So it's quite balanced. I think we will be able to have a cost reduction, especially when we are looking at training providers in more, you could say, remote places compared to where the auditor is traveling from. So I think that there will be a cost saving aspects in it here as well, but we're not quite there yet.
Yeah. And Gidrius, you were fairly optimistic by suggesting half of the audits could be carried out like this. Why was that?
I was not so optimistic. The figures I said during the preparation for the webinar, the figures were estimated by me and by Lloyd's Register that about maybe 30% or 40%, it's up to 40%, audit can be done remotely. So the figure of 40% is here, so it's okay with me. Because I think that let's say if you speak about the documentation and management system, it's client do understand more or less, they are quite good at that point. But anyway, we most focus need to be for witnessing of trainings, and then there are some let's say risks and things that we need to know when doing witnessing the practical classes remotely. So I would say that it's better to being on site and watching and witnessing the practical trainings, especially being on site comparing them with a remote audit. So
yeah, so you're already turning to the right side of this slide, the challenges. Yeah, could you just talk a little bit more about what you see as challenges?
I think you know that all opportunities and all risks and all challenges they are linked with each other, so we cannot speak only about opportunities or only about challenges. There are also a number of risks here. So we were discussing also during the preparation for webinar. I even wrote more risks and challenges here, and I will share this maybe later in discussion. But of course, the main risks and the higher risk is for us, for auditors, to be able to evaluate that learning objectives are met and to leave the client and end up the audit without any doubts and any headache, and be sure that the training provider is able to deliver safe and sound trainings, and his trainings are able to meet the learning objectives and learning outcome. So this is the biggest risk. And this risk, I think Soren will agree, this risk consists of many smaller ones, and then we need to think about them every time, and we need to have some, let's say, mitigation actions or action plan in our heads, and to be, let's say, be on track every time, and to be focused on the audit and on the trainings.
Can you talk a little bit to those mitigations? What could those be? Can you come examples?
It's of course it's again, it depends on the training provider. For example, I have plenty of clients, plenty of training providers that are quite experienced in the field. So they are already been delivering a number of remote trainings for other schemes, or STCW convention, for example, or other schemes. So they are not new here. So with them, it's much easier to do the audit, much easier to get some knowledge about the tools they're using, about the procedures. There is lower risk that I don't know, some kind of technical things will happen. The approach is not appropriate of the training provider or instructor. They are good at that. But I think there is plenty of newcomers to the market and new training providers, and the remote audit for them, it would be a bit more challenging, I would say.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I can supplement that. If you're familiar as auditor with a training provider, it works fine. I mean, you know the training provider, you know the facilities, you know how they are delivering the training. It works fine, and you know you have in your memory, you also know what to look for from last year, from last audit. And as the challenge is, if we someday we might be in a situation where we do the initial audit, the stage 2 audit remotely, if that would be the case someday. So far we have managed to do the you could say the stage 2 audit on site the first time, and that's also within the, of course, within the rules of GWO, and we haven't been asked to go for the first audit remotely yet. And so I think it works that way. If the training provider is you could say digital prepared, if he has his documentation ready as digital documents, not in paper, etc. I think it can work okay.
Yeah, we have actually a question from the audience that I'd like to bring in here. So someone asked, would it be possible as an option to do the audit process in 2 parts? First part remotely about the documentation, and practical part as a second moment after documentation. And of course, that is exactly the intention of what we have talked about.
Yes.
And as you touched on, so just to be clear, yeah, first initial audit should also always be an on-site audit.
Exactly. And actually, that's how we're doing it. We first take the, you could say, the documentation part, and then we go to the practical part afterwards that. And I think that works fine in general. So I think the experience in general are fine. One of the issues we have seen is that you could say that as stated here, the limitation of the connection, that we really are able to use the camera in a high quality. I mean, that's one of the issues. Often we see it works fine in the office where we share screens, we have interviews with the instructors, with the managers, etc. But then we go to the training facility where they might not have the same capacity on and what we can do there is we can ask the training provider that we do a trial up front the audit, so they are prepared, so they have a chance to improve their connections before the audit. So to do a trial is essential to have a success here, that we are sure that it's actually is working, and we normally use that maybe a week before, so they have a chance to do something if that's needed.
Yeah, and we talked about this when we prepared this, that one of the things that you have noticed is time management and planning is really essential and key. as we're all learning new things and also preparing for these webinars, we just did this before, rehearsed a little bit. We know this. All right. And we haven't actually rehearsed this next bit, but I was going to ask you, Jesper or Lisa, if you have any questions that you would like to ask of our two auditors while we have the case study on screen.
I think just a comment from my side, because the whole concept about remote auditing is extremely interesting and something a few years ago we were simply not interested in to do, because there was a perception of we'll miss the human interaction and the ability to look closer when on site. If you know, COVID-19 taught us many things about being together online, but also engaging with each other online. And I think if something good has to be taken out of COVID-19, it has to be the way that we engage with other people. So just reflecting on what Gideon and Søren just said, it's also about how they present and give an auditee the possibility to prepare and have a test run for the actual audit and know what to present to them, but also how to engage with them, despite it's online. So there are a lot of opportunities there.
Yes.
Thank you.
I think for me, one of the takeaways here is how much of this is transferable to normal business operations. So we're specifically talking here about auditing against GWO standards, but we could equally be talking about some of the challenges in our normal business operations during COVID, when we're trying to switch to this operating remotely rather than operating always by traveling and getting to site. So some of the lessons that we talk about here and some of the challenges we've heard from today and solutions that we've heard, more importantly, are things that we can take into our day-to-day jobs, either as EHS professionals or as business operation managers.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks for joining. And we still have a little bit of a connection issue with your camera, I think, but it's great that you are on still and we can hear you and you go through. Great, thank you. So let's go to our next round of feedback time. We have on menti.com again a dialogue cloud, I think it's called. So log on to menti.com, use the code 8967997, and please type in your answer to the question. What challenges do you anticipate from a remote audits, either delivering or receiving, depending on who you are? So I can see we already have a couple. Limited field of vision when witnessing training. This is what you mentioned, Gedrius.
Yes.
Being able to have a clear picture of the training is in the same kind of family.
You know, I have my own tables here, big ones.
Yeah.
I made some homework, and almost all these risks or challenges, they are here in my tables as well.
Yeah. So I can see one interesting thing that says, "Let human touch, miss the coffee machine talk." How is that valuable, Gedrius? Could you have you found that valuable, or Søren, the coffee machine talk?
Yes, I mean,
yes, sorry, it was a question to me. Yes, so anyway, I found it quite valuable, because it's even during when I am witnessing the theory classes, it's very great when the delegates are having the lunch break or coffee break during the trainings, and they just can have in the free from training atmosphere just to share their experience and to speak about some issues what they saw, or let's say the guys who are newcomers to the business and to the market, they are asking the more experienced guys about some things. I think it's quite valuable. We cannot keep drinking the coffee for 1 hour, but 10 minutes for that, it's very good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Also for the auditor and for training provider, it's also the same. We can discuss some issues outside the audit.
And Søren, you want to elaborate?
Yeah, it's you get some quite valuable informal information while you are at the coffee machine or wherever the break is. I quit smoking some years ago, and I also realized that I lost some information doing that. Of course, there's a lot of other benefits of not being a smoker. So, and I still drink my coffee. So that's a key point sometimes to get the informal information is that you can talk to the delegates, to the instructor in a more informal setup, you could say.
Yeah,
and this is a joke also with the auditors, that there is a good thing to find one guy who speaks a lot, and auditor is very lucky to have this guy, because he can just only listen for him and to find some issues.
Good. So I can't
It's a
see
joke.
the bottom part here. It says receiving, demonstrating, bad internet connection. There's a couple of here.
Yeah.
Receiving, demonstrating compliance with training, delivery, and equipment when it's online. Realistically, this makes an audit just an administrative review. There's no showing of how we're doing, just showing how we did it. Can you comment on that, Søren?
Well, I'm not sure I'm quite understand what's the point is here, because when we have these audits, we do them online. I mean, we are not having something recording sent to us. So I mean, it is more or less to be there on site. Just we have instead of using our eyes, we see through the camera. So of course we see the training as it should be. One of the challenges we have seen at a few training providers is that due to the lockdown, they have not been able to have real delegates, real participants. So they have been forced to use mock-ups. And of course, that is a little different situation than supervising real training, if we could call it that.
Yeah, understood. So for whoever who wrote this one, and for everyone actually, in the requirements for certification bodies, in Annex 3 is what we're talking about, where we have remote auditing. Søren, can you read the paragraph for us about witnessing?
Well, for witnessing training, it should be in a live environment. So it should not be a picture of training or a picture of necessarily equipment. So if the auditor asks during the audit, show me how you inspect equipment or you maintain equipment or you do this type of training, it must be real-time based. So then it's a matter of strapping a GoPro on the helmet or the harness and then going out and showing it. So it would not be accepted as simply being administrative review. That is not the intention or allowed.
Yes, I would like to ask, because we are not looking at the video recordings of the trainings. We are looking at the real trainings and the live trainings.
Exactly.
And if there are no delegates, and it was especially when the training providers is under initial assessment, for example, at least we ask, please use your own stuff for the guys who would like to participate, for example, in these trainings, and use them as delegates with all these safety precautions and so on. So anyway, we still look at the live trainings. Of course, there are plenty of, again, the risks using the cameras to see some details of the trainings, because being on site, from my experience, I saw plenty of mistakes that were done by delegates, and instructors were not able to see them even, because there is only one instructor and six delegates. And using the cameras and being remote, it's even harder to notice these things. But we still, let's say, if the auditor is experienced one, he knows the points at least a bit, yes, about that. So he can stop the trainings, he can ask, he can go closer, ask cameraman to go closer or something like that. But it's possible. It's just about the auditor, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it said also in the word cloud something about bad quality or slow internet connection and so on. And as you also said, Søren, there's a good reason to conduct a test before you actually do it, because if it is not possible to do a real-time audit using video camera, then the digital solution is not suited for this training provider. So
Exactly.
there should not be any use of other things just because there's an instance of bad internet at that location. Then unfortunately, remote auditing is not well suited for this training provider location.
Yeah. Or they have to invest some in a better connection if that's possible.
Yes, yes. And also there are a number of limited vision or field of vision or anything like that. And again, that's something as part of the planning for the audit that, you know, auditor and training providers should agree on. Okay, what measures do we implement to make sure that the auditor can sit halfway around the world perhaps and actually be physically present as much as possible digitally and have a proper vision of both the training being delivered and the facilities and the equipment and equipment inspection and so on. So that should be part of the planning of the audit.
All right. We have we're almost halfway through, and we actually have two other panelists that we have not heard so much from. Jesper, is there anything in the challenges or the word cloud here coming up that surprises you?
I wouldn't say it surprises me because there are many aspects of doing remote audit, so I think it's very covering. I see a lot of these that I actually recognize as both an opportunity but also a concern myself. So most importantly, I mean, if an audit is done remotely, how do we actually ensure that the objective is met to the same degree as if it was done in physical presence?
That is the trick.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That is the trick. Lisa, would you have cared to comment, or if not, I would go to the first question that we've prepared with you.
Yeah, I would just comment quickly. I really like the comment about no personal conversation and you know, that coffee cup conversation. I think that is very important. We certainly can't replicate that remotely. So we need to build in place into the audit different ways of checking body language, visual cues. I think that is something we have to think of and certainly be cognizant of when we're doing remote auditing.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think it speaks to, I mean, when we created this remote auditing annex, we said never for the first audit.
Yes.
Exactly.
And maybe that was wise to do that and maintain this, because when you do your second audit or you're doing a revisit with surveillance, you know who you're talking to already.
Exactly.
And, yeah. All right, great. Maybe we can move on for the next slide. So we have prepared a couple of questions, and in light of this today's topic, which is remote auditing, what does good quality training look like, and how can an auditor evaluate this? Lisa, can I ask you to start addressing this with what you just heard in mind and what you've prepared?
Yeah, certainly. So when I think about good quality training, I think back to personal experience, and I think about what was my favourite teacher at school, what was my favourite class from school or from university, and more importantly, what made that memorable. And often I come back to, well, it was a nice environment, the content was engaging, it was a lively instructor, it was good body language, good visual cues. And these are all the things that for me make good quality training now in the business environment. So for the participants, it does have to be enjoyable. There has to be almost an element of fun, not too much fun, but certainly an element of fun. It has to be engaging, has to be accurate and well delivered by a competent instructor, somebody who really understands the audience. And overall, for the participant, it needs to be an experience both from start to finish. And then when I think about auditing that, we need to be able to assess from our perspective at GWO that the content is accurate, that we're staying to the standards, not drifting into too many sub-conversations. We need to make sure that the instructor themselves is confident in delivery. So not just that they know the content, but they actually understand the content. They're able to react to questions and answer from a knowledgeable base. I think that's really important. And then to the point where we're just talking about, how do we make sure that the audience are engaged? Are they asking questions? Are they actively participating in not just the practical sessions of training, but just in the general conversation and general general training environment itself? And lastly, is the environment itself conducive to training? We talked on the last slide about connectivity problems, people being on camera, like myself today, struggling to be on camera. These things make a big difference when you're trying to make sure you're delivering and auditing good quality training.
Definitely. Thank you, Lisa. Jesper?
I think Lisa said most of it, and echoing what she said most importantly is that you can relate to the training, and that I would actually go as far as saying you enjoy yourself and have a good takeaway from the training. But from a GWO and audit and compliance perspective, I think it's better to ask the question, instead of what good quality training looks like, how do we ensure that the outcome of the training sessions globally are harmonized? So regardless of you take training in Denmark, in UK, or in US, or in Taiwan, that you actually experience the same training, that you get the same message, and you try the same obstacles or technical challenges, so that the overall learning experience is the same and harmonized, balanced globally. So I think it's one of the things underlying this that is very important to look at long term.
Yeah, and this is what we use the auditors to help us ensure. So the question is, how do we guide auditors in that? With this, maybe I can turn the question back to you, Søren. Are you receiving enough guidance from GWO in terms of evaluating training so that it looks the same and feels the same wherever you go with training centers?
I don't think we receive enough, because you can always desire more and more. So please come with it. But of course, as auditors, we have to, I'd say we have to rely on the standards. We have to rely on that what you guys had put into the standards is the real the real learning objective that is needed. For instance, when we're looking at the first aid training, I mean, it's not up to us to discuss if you need to do the Heimlich exercise or not. I mean, that's put into the standard for some reason, and one of our prime job is to go through the lessons planned and to see if they have covered all things and they're delivering it in a, you could say, in a good way, with as Lisa mentioned, these very important qualified engaged instructors. I mean, then we have a possibility to have a success.
Thank you. Gedrius, would you have any comments to this one?
Yes. Even yesterday it was my last audit of training provider against GWO standards, and being the training provider auditing the trainings, I received the feedback from the instructor that delegates were saying after the trainings that they received the same similar knowledge and trainings that they received 2 years ago in, I cannot remember, in Germany. So it means that we are working in correct way. Let's say more or less we are trying to do that. That as Jesper said, that the outcome and the same knowledge are received. It's in Lithuania, in Germany, in United States, or in China. It doesn't matter. So this is the purpose of us as auditors. And also I do agree with Lisa that the main let's say main connection between it doesn't matter how good the facilities of training providers are, how good the PowerPoint presentations are, but if instructor is not good enough, I would say that the delegate at the very end will not be satisfied with the results. So instructor is a key element here, and the knowledge of instructor, his experience, his ability to manage the delegates, to motivate them, it's key point here, I think.
Okay, so maybe we can turn to the question on the screen right now for you, and maybe you can continue, Gidre. So how is the remote audit the same or different from a normal audit? What are the greatest challenges when you have to do the things differently?
So it's again like the audits are the same in the light of that the standards are the same, that the same outcome of the audit need to be let's say statement on the outcome of audit need to be made. So are they in line? Are they in compliance or no? Still, we need to verify all the documentation. We need to witness training classes, theory, practical ones. So it doesn't matter. It's a remote audit or on-site audit. But of course, there are the biggest differences between that we are using during remote audit number of tools for the audit. I mean for these web connections or webinars, everything around. So there is plenty of tools for that. Also, of course, again, the same risks: preparation for the audit, interviewing the people, seeing the details, participating in the practical exercises, practical classes, watching through the cameras. So plenty of differences, and about how they look the same, I think more or less they look as the same, as the outcome still need to be met and positive. So.
Okay, thank you. So now I would like to go to the next question, where we hold a mirror a little bit up to ourselves. Obviously, Lisa, it's been a quite dynamic year, and we've been working fast with you guys in the Audit Compliance Committee and the EXCO. If we had our time again, what do you think we should or could have done differently?
So for me, in an ideal situation, where we weren't having to go so fast, for me, one of the main things I would want to do differently is get more participation from some of the end users, some of those training providers themselves, and have them input into the process in a much more engaged way, so that we were building a process that we knew was going to be suitable for them, and therefore suitable for the participants in the end. So I think for me, that'd be one of the key changes I would want to make going forward, if we were to start again on the digital requirements.
Yes, and maybe I can put that question directly to Gidrius or Søren. Did you feel left out in the development of the digital requirements? Would you have done things differently if we had included you much more in that quite fast process there in March, April?
I don't think we have the time for it anyway, because as you know, we are quite busy to keep our business going, to turn into this digital transformation. And to be honest, I don't think we are the experts in making the training requirements and the standards, because we are not working with this hands-on, you could say, as people are in the industry. So I think what we have seen from MWOW, a turbine manufacturer, more or less doing their own, you could say, their own development and giving that to the whole training industry. I think that's more or less also a way of going forward to as Lisa mentioned, to involve the end user more directly.
Yeah, but to Lisa's point, so usually we spend a lot of time aligning with stakeholders that the product that we put out there has been tested and actually fits and is aligned with what you need. So maybe I can look at you, Gidrius, now. Do you think if we had much more time, how do you think the result would have been different? I mean, and then when we evaluate this, what should we improve on?
I think here we can speak about two things: about BSTRP, which was developed as the response to the pandemic situation, and about the developing of digital requirements for training providers, which these requirements are not new. I already mentioned that some training providers are already delivering a number of trainings, so for them it's just maybe not first class, but at least third one, so it's okay for them. But if we speak about BSTRP and development of it as a response for pandemic situation, I think it should be faster. it should be not in such a big amount of pages of the standard. Right now it's 160 pages. I think I would manage to put this only in 2 A4 format pages, just as general requirements and general, let's say, key steps of that, because we all can read the BST standard. It's okay with us. And yes, maybe for development of this BSTRP, I feel that I and maybe other experienced auditors could be involved a bit more. But again, I will repeat that the time was a key element here. And also some requirements here in the BSTRP, they are hard to be implemented, such as, for example, that for practical demonstration of some exercises, delegate need to have a rescue device. If I am sitting on sofa at home, I am willing to finish the trainings and to get my certificate prolonged for 6 months. I'm not having the rescue device at home. Even the harness is left somewhere at storage. So from practical point of view, we auditors and the training providers, we are quite often, let's say, contacting by phone, by emails, and we are just explaining to each other, trying to realize how we can implement, how they can implement these or these requirements. And from BSTRP, it seems that some requirements were, let's say, too hard to implement. About developing of digital requirements, I think it's more or less okay. I think you are also quite experienced here, so it's nothing very special. You are not offering kind of tools or schemes or some special procedures. So in general terms, it's okay. So they are free to select any tools for that, any processes and procedures to create. So it's okay, I think, from that point of view.
All right, Søren. Same question to you. If we had much more time, what would have been better? Or rather, we could also phrase it in a different way. We did create BSTRP in a really, really fast way, and there are things in there that we acknowledge are not the best. And we now have time and opportunity to go back and review it, which we will start doing in October. Whether to continue with this, how to change it. So, what should we change from an auditor point of view?
As Greta said, make it more, you could say, simple. I mean, the standards itself are quite long documents, and I don't think we need that. And also, you could say it's maybe you should consider in some ways to start from scratch. I mean, instead of having a classroom training, trying to transfer that into a digital delivery is complicated. Maybe also you could consider learn from some of the, can we call them digital masters? I mean, we have companies like Google, like Apple, that are really, they can something using the digital tools. So maybe it could also be considered to involve such, you could say, knowledge into the development process. But of course, then there might be some issues with the financing, etc. But I think that could be an opportunity to look into other industries that are doing digital learning. But I assume that have been considered already.
Thank you, at least for the consideration. I mean, I'm going to turn back again and hold the mirror up to you, Jesper, as the second representative of our executive committee here today. If you look back at this process and we were to begin developing digital requirements again, what do you think we could have done better, or maybe should do better when we review it here the first time?
I think using the words like "to do better" implies that we did something perhaps not standard. I would say that given the circumstances, I experienced that GWO quite rapidly and very consistently delivered a standard that allowed online training. So of course, if we were to do things differently, and there is always in hindsight, Jakob. So I would be, again, and not to sound like a broken record, but it's about the harmonization of training, identifying yourself with the end user. How do we ensure that on a digital platform, the end user is getting the same takeaway as from the classroom training? I think maybe more thorough studies and analysis could have been or can now be put into that. But GWO was forced to take a decision, and then took a very wise decision quite rapidly. So come October, it's probably extracting the good learnings that we have from the test that we have with the partial training, an online training environment.
Yeah. Yeah, and on that note, general information for everyone listening in today, we are starting a digitalization study, a feasibility study here in the next couple of weeks. We'll begin this study to look at how can we do these things better and improve on our requirements and on our guidance to training providers and even to the whole portfolio. Should we move on to the next question and next slide, please? So you have been through the auditor qualification training, both of you auditors here.
No.
Could this be a step toward harmonizing reporting by certification bodies?
Sure.
Done.
Yeah, I mean that's more or less a must. I think that we have to have these AQTs up and running, and if we could have them also done online, that would be really good, because at the moment we see we have colleagues being in a global certification body. We have colleagues in Taiwan, we have colleagues in South Africa starting with this business, and they need this training. At the moment we are giving them the training as good as we can, but I think the AQ2 training is essential also to have this harmonizing approach to audits.
So I can say we have internally just had meetings about setting up the first virtual classroom AQT end of September. Is that correct, Sam?
The first pilot.
The first pilot
will go out end of September, and we'll also have one early October, and then hopefully we'll begin rolling there.
So we should be delivering the AQT in a digital virtual classroom for all time zones at least 2 or 3 times before the end of the year.
Great.
Yeah. Gidjo, it's a question for you. Same question as on the screen. What do you think about harmonized reporting?
Yes, speaking about the AQT trainings, I agree that this event is necessary, and it's quite good to calibrate the auditors to have the same outcome of the audit, as Jesper said, in different training providers, the same outcome. So as this event for calibration of auditors, we are also doing this like as we are calling consistency meetings in, for example, in Lloyd's, as we are meeting once a year and discussing the things, sharing experience. So this is okay. But if you would take a look at the Menticom question number 1, what are the expectations from the remote audit? I think that the most of responders wrote that it helps the client understand GWO. Auditor helps the client understand GWO requirements. These AQT trainings are only 1.5-day trainings, which are more or less about the 2 standards, about standards for training providers and standards for certification bodies. Clients are not asking me questions about how to do internal audit, how to do management review, how to manage the records, and so on. They are asking some specific questions which are related to other GWO standards, as we are calling them product standards. So it's BST, ART, Enhanced First Aid, Blade Repair, Slinger Signaler, and they are asking quite a technical questions. And let's say if I would be not so experienced auditor with some experience in the field, working on the wind turbines offshore, I would not be able to answer them some questions. And this is about also, like the auditors saying, it's about consultation. It's not allowed to consult the clients on the requirements, yes, but we can share our experience. If I am experienced, I can do that. But if I would be a new auditor who wants to do the GWO audits, I think I would be, let's say, a bit stressed on the questions I receive from the clients time by time. So AQT as overall, yes, it's okay. As about details, I think it's not enough. So you need to have more experience. But it's good tool, and maybe you go forward and GWO go forward with developing some maybe tools for the same tools that would be used by different certification bodies for the audit. So it can be either the checklist, either I don't know, some tablet with online questions just to put tick, make photo, something, and you will have all let's say one view from the all audits from around the world. So
interesting points. Thank you very much, and that noted. Maybe I can turn to you, Lisa, for a comment on this. And Gidris is also speaking to this double role that we sometimes ask auditors to take, both as a consultant and as an auditor, which is not quite what auditors usually are expected to do.
No, I think that's great feedback from Gidris there, and it maybe points to a gap that we need to look at. You know, do the training providers have access to the information or help they need to actually implement those standards? And that can be two things for us to go look at as a team. Jakob, you know, one is, you know, I think the point was made earlier, we need to simplify how the standards are written, number one. But secondly, we need to maybe look at how we interact with the training providers. You know, is it easy for them to ask a question and have an accurate answer? Because that will take the pressure off the auditors who do need to stay in scope, because you know, they're governed by a different set of rules as well. And it'll, you know, it'll allow us to grow faster as well in terms of just getting the AQT people out there with that qualification. So it's good feedback. I think we need to, it gives us food for thought.
Thank you, yeah. Jesper?
I would say the same, and also perhaps with a bit of caution that it's certainly it's an interesting concept to have an auditor who also functions as an advisor. I think more or less GWO needs to take notice of this and explore if other opportunity is available or possible in terms of securing the independence from the auditors.
Yeah, okay, thank you. We're approaching the hour. I would like to, so just a couple of comments and responses to your last comment here, Gidris. All of you who are on here, if you have a question for us, you can always send it to us at info@globalwindsafety.org. We have people sitting answering any questions, and lots of questions from training centers, prospective new training providers and experienced. We usually answer within 24 hours or business hours, at least one business day. That's usually what we do. So please don't be shy, write to us. The questions that you have raised today from the audience, there's a couple of those that are on training, so we will get back to you in person for all of you. This is last time to ask a question. I'm just looking if there's anything here that's relevant. Lots of relevant questions, but not really on the topic of auditing. So I will make sure to answer those afterwards. Before we stop, maybe just a feedback time. Can I ask you all, and I say thank you to the panel, and ask you all to go to menti.com and use the code 6740874 and give us an idea of how likely it is that you will request or provide a remote audit within the next 12 months. And this is just like an idea for us to know how many is going to use this. Definitely yes, 1, 2, probably yes, yeah, it's growing, that's good. Looks likely, only 4. Can we have some more answers? Yes, please. Yeah. Undecided. And of course, there is the opportunity to have used the remote auditing as a blended audit, if you will, where you do parts of it as remotely, and then you have one of these guys or one of the colleagues in the auditor corps visit you. Okay, thank you. It looks like it's something that is going to be taken up, and it gives us a lot more reason to really go into details with the review of this annex and the rules and see if we can be clearer and give you more guidance, not just as auditors, but as well as training providers who are receiving the audit. Thank you very much. With that, I'll say thank you. Thank you to you, Søren, Gidrius, Jordis from LRQA, Søren Halbom, DNVGL, Jesper Bakke Hansen from Ørsted, also our Vice Chair of Audit Compliance Committee, Lisa Mallan from GE, and also our Chair of the Audit Compliance Committee. Thank you all for participating. Shout out to Ralph. Hope you get well soon. Thank you, Elia. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. And join us next week for our third webinar that is about growth and how the new digital tools may help us achieve our targets of doubling within 3 years the delivery of safety training as governed by GWO in the world. Thank you very much. Bye bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.